Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I'm Charlie Spears with Blockspace Media. Bitcoin Season 2 is about new faces and new topics on the oldest blockchain, Bitcoin. Make sure to hit our other content from Blockspace. Blockspace.media is the website. We send out a bi-weekly newsletter, and we have a newsletter for mining content. Check out the Mining Pod and the Gwart Show. But today we have an interesting topic list because this weekend was huge for Bitcoin's soft fork discussion. If you were not terminally online, like I always am, maybe you missed it. But we had significant forward movement on the discussion of does Bitcoin get a soft fork? And I know all of you listening are going to say, "Oh, awesome! We're going to get OpCat." You might be this is a curveball because this time the soft fork discussion forward movement happened about op CTV, that is op check template verify. Maybe you're not familiar with this, but I want to get you familiar. So I'm going to break it down here in a moment. We're going to talk about who came out supporting CTV, why, and maybe just to give a little context on what this software proposal is. But before that, a word from our sponsor. Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Botanix. Botanix Labs is pioneering a new direction for DeFi with the first EVM L2 running on Bitcoin that's built to be forward secure, decentralized, and share gas fees generated by the network with users. See the future of DeFi at Botanix, botanixlabs.xyz. So as I said, yeah, we have significant forward movement, at least in the discussion arena, among more developer-focused voices. So we had a lot of people come out in support of CTV this week. If you're not familiar with CTV, it is BIP 119. I'm going to share this really quickly and show this to you. You can go to utxos.org. Yes, utxos.org to learn more about this particular software proposal. But basically, Jeremy Rubin, who spoke at our conference a couple weeks ago in Boston, is behind this, and it is BIP 119 op check template verify, which is a simple proposal to, quote, power the next wave of adoption and applications. It is very carefully engineered and simple to understand, easy to deploy. Basically, you might call it next-gen smart contracts for Bitcoin. I'm not going to explain much more about it. I will be explaining it in a newsletter that comes out tomorrow on the Blockspace newsletter, but let's just get right into it. So, I think this has been kicking off a lot of the discussion, which is James O'Byrne's, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. James O'Byrne, longtime Bitcoin core dev, has been making some long form posts on Twitter, rather X, about Bitcoin Core. He's always been kind of spicy and opinionated, but he's not been that spicy or opinionated in recent times. And he's had two long form posts where these are multiple paragraphs where he talks about Bitcoin Core and the consensus discussion. And this most recent one, which was a few days ago, is called Bitcoin Core's Loss of Focus. Basically, he says Bitcoin Core used to have this kind of soft leadership, or you might even say very hard leadership, where certain people who are leading prominent members of Bitcoin Core would say, we are going to do a soft fork and let's explain how it's going to happen. And this has pretty much been the process for mostly as long as Bitcoin Core has been around. But James O'Byrne says that Core has been tone deaf, especially as it relates to CTV. And Jeremy Rubin, in particular, has been pointing out for years, CTV would be the most efficient way to guarantee that people can withdraw coins from institutions during times of on-chain panic and congestion. So this generated a lot of discussion in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And one main thing that differentiates this recent weekend of CTV discussion is that it's from new voices which have not really come out in support of CAT. So I would say there's this class of Bitcoiner who I would say they're more legacy Bitcoiner, they're more long-term. You might call them laser eyes, but I would say they're more this kind of neutral Bitcoiner who doesn't like JPEGs, but they might be open to certain software proposals. You saw a lot of forward movement on that front. And in particular, I'm going to call out for you ordinals enjoyers, Casey Rodamore. A lot of you might not know, but while Casey did invent ordinals and make it easy for all of us to put our JPEGs and fungible tokens on Bitcoin, he would probably not describe himself as similar to like the Taproot Wizards or the OpCat people. He's really not spoken very much about this recently. He did a podcast for Hell Money on why he doesn't like Drive Chain in particular, but he's been notably silent on his opinions about, say, OpCat. But recently, this past weekend, on the 23rd, he said, quote, "I wonder if I should be more vocal in my support for OpCTV. It could backfire since I'm loathed by a subset of Bitcoiners." So Casey is implicit. I think he's actually pretty explicit here that he says he supports OpCTV. This is really the first time we have seen Casey since he rocketed into superstardom and became one of the most influential voices on Bitcoin. These were the first times we've seen him come out and say, "I support a soft fork." Mostly his voice has been either agnostic, meaning he doesn't have a certain strong opinion, or he doesn't want to comment on it. So this is very notable. I did respond. Other people responded. The other person who responded to this is Kale. So if you're an ordinals enjoyer and you don't know who this guy is, Calle, Kale BTC. He is kind of the token eCash or Cashew Mint guy. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's kind of like it's a little bit like Lightning, where you can issue a bunch of tokens trustlessly, and you have an operator who runs all the tokens. It's more privacy focused. It still has a kind of centralized core, person who operates this mint ecosystem, but it plugs really well into Bitcoin, and it's very popular among what I would call a lot of laser eyes. So Kale has been like the main voice and guy behind this for a while. And Kale, this past weekend, said, quote, "After years of reading almost every article, forum post, academic paper, coasting, bit devs, countless discussions on what's the best way forward for Bitcoin, I say, enough with this bullshit. The intelligentsia is separating from the real world. Let's activate CTV." This is significant because Kale is he would be in like the hardcore Bitcoin camp, I would say, where he doesn't like JPEGs, he doesn't like fungible tokens on Bitcoin. He would be one of the hardest core Bitcoiners, and he's very influential among a subset of these hardcore Bitcoiners. And he came out notably explicitly in favor of CTV, and he's repeatedly said this, but in the past he's made comments about it and he said he's for it, but he hasn't been like hardline, like we need to activate this. Let's go ahead and activate it. So this is another notable voice in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I'll also now just go into other people. So we have Jacob Brown, Jake Blockchain. Maybe you're watching Jake. Jake is again pretty long time Bitcoiner. I would say very influential in the tech in the Bitcoin tech space. And Jake and I have talked, I think, on his podcast, back and forth on that. He's not super in favor of OpCat. I think he kind of likes CTV, but he would be more of the I don't really want to change anything on Bitcoin right now. We haven't fully explored the capabilities of what Bitcoin can do right now. These things I personally don't really disagree with. But he also came out in support of CTV. Quote, "I think the best path forward is CTV now, coupled with clear milestone-based roadmap for a few key follow-on upgrades in 12 to 18 months after CTV activates." He says, quote, "OpCat is looking less enticing in a world where TapScript is doing more and more, and DLCs, those are discrete log contracts, are here with lending yield safer wrap versions of Bitcoin." He says, "Let's get covenants now, or let's do a huge upgrade that does many things." So you see across the board, a lot of people who were not really in the OpCat camp and who would probably even be in the cautionary Bitcoin upgrade camp coming out pretty clearly in support of CTV. And this is what I'm talking about when this past weekend, this all kind of happened at the same time, where kind of a wave of people who all support OpCheck template verify said, okay, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to be clear that I want this. And Jacob Brown also says, props to the Wizards for pushing the Overton window of OpCat. It went from ungodly strong to ungodly strong to reasonable pretty quickly. I think what he meant to say is very unlikely to reasonable very quickly. So really, a lot of what the uh, Wizards have done is just get everyone off the couch. So this does not mean that I think OpCat's not going to happen. This means rather that OpCat has been pushed really um, uh, pretty aggressively from a campaigning standpoint, from the Wizards, from Starkware, even from a lot of Lightning people. Surprise! And what that has done is get a lot of people off the couch on the OpCTV proposal, BIP 119. So I'm just giving you kind of an update snapshot on how I feel that the discussion is currently progressing. Also, a voice, Gigi Guijame, I believe is how you say his name, but he, formerly of Galaxy Digital, writes one of the best Bitcoin researchers in the space, and now with UTXO management on the fund side, where he says that he's pro-activating CTV now. He says he feels like he's always saying this. And he and I and other people are kind of going back and forth on some other details. But what you're seeing here is a common thread that many people want CTV. Then we have this account. It's an anonymous account that many of us call FloppyDisGuy /dev/fd0 1440000 bytes is the username, and he's famous kind of, I would say, infamous chaotic Bitcoin dev who is very skilled and has very strong fiery opinions and words. But he put out a tweet because he's very pro CTV. He put out a tweet saying he would like to put up a page on one of the Bitcoin wikis, bitcoin.it, to show which developers and which companies have support for CTV. You know, we have done this with SegWit in the past. If you go to bitcoin.it and you go to the SegWit support page, you'll see this chart that I'm showing here for your listeners. It's just it's a table with different BIP proposals and then notable developers and companies saying if they support it, what they think about it. Are they agnostic? Do they not like it? Do they prefer it? Do they think it's a deficient proposal? So what FloppyDisGuy, as I said, he said he proposed we add a BIP 119, that is CTV column to this, so that we can see who in the ecosystem supports it. Now you've got to know that that there are some people who are the editors of this particular Wikipedia. My tactful gut instinct comment on the editors of this is that they are probably not motivated, or probably they probably discourage CTV. So it will be interesting to see how this might play out. But yeah, so FloppyDisGuy wants to at least put up some kind of billboard and say, let's start getting people on, let's start getting like people, let's start getting their voices. What do they think? Are they for it? Are they against it? Yada, yada, yada. So then I'm going to go over to Noster, which I don't go to very often, but this is Noster. And I'm going to go to Matt Odell of the Tales from the Crypt, or TFTC podcast. Matt Odell is one of the most prominent voices in Bitcoin, and I would describe him as one of the more like hardcore laser eyes, who's also not a hypocrite. If I just want to be very blunt, he's not hypocritical, puts his money where his mouth is. He's a very well respected guy. I respect him, but he really had, I would say, the most notable counter opinion, which is he doesn't he thinks that a minority software push through without clear consensus can be quite dangerous. Bitcoin stakeholders are more diverse than they've ever been. Pretty much guarantees that all current proposals would be contentious. He says he wants to, quote, lean towards responsible hard forks with far out flag days, measuring in years or decades. Um, and he does not support any proposals. If there were a fork today, he would not follow it. So he would not be in support of CTV. I think one interesting thing here, and this is a point I like to zero in on, is he says about flag days. So that if you're not familiar with flag days, like when we want to activate one of these soft forks, it's convention for people to say we're going to have a way to indicate that you do or don't support a soft fork, and this extends for miners, extends for other major nodes and economic nodes across the network, to basically, allow people to kind of metaphorically raise a flag to say we're going to soft fork, and allows people to kind of coordinate in a way that's easy to track. Matt Odell says that that should be on a much longer timeline than a few months. Um, he wants it to be years or decades in this case. I do not think that makes sense at all. While I think it's up for debate about how urgent it is to soft fork, I think that is a very uh, that's kind of a wild opinion. So I'm just gonna throw it out there. Um, anyway, but Matt is you should be following Matt. You should be listening to what he says because he's a very important, prominent voice who I respect. In other news on the soft fork discussion, another notable event is Moon Settler. You should follow this account. Moon Settler and Reardon Code have been working on the L Enhance soft fork proposal. L Enhance is a combination of a few opcodes, and they basically would improve, or you might say enhance, Lightning. Basically, make it much easier to run Lightning and scale Lightning. And they've been making significant forward steps, both describing how it is and how it works on like the website and the public communication front, as well as the technical side, further defining like what it is, how it works, and then implementing an activation client. So Moon Settler has been trying to do this publicly, saying if we can learn anything useful from the CTV saga is that people do not like to be surprised. He says, we are doing the final touches to the BIPs and code right now. We will finalize the activation client code by the end of 2024. After that, people can download the source and build it for themselves. He says, miner signaling starts on May 22nd, 2025. That's pizza day. A timeout for lock-in is proof of keys day, January 3rd, 2028. And the earliest L Enhance could be activated is November 9th, 2025. November 9th is a big day, actually, because November 9th is the anniversary of their proposed date for the earliest activation of CTV, originally in 2022. It was also the date of our conference, Op Next. So we have now CTV getting a significant forward movement in support from notable, I would say, more cautious, slower moving non-cat people. And then we have simultaneously an L Enhance soft fork proposal getting some material work done on legwork done, at least on the like getting it ready to be able to be voted for or signaled for. Yeah, so in other words, just to wrap this up, the metrics, mempool is back down to 8 to 12 sats per VByte. We have some modest fee activity on Bitcoin. We're halfway through a difficulty adjustment. And then in light of all this, even though Bitcoin's at 100K, if we're going to pull up a dashboard, I'm going to pull up Merch's dashboard, Dune dashboard here to say, if we just look at the transactions on Bitcoin today, runes still account for the majority of transaction types on Bitcoin. Runes today are 55 to 61% of all transactions on Bitcoin. So very interesting to see Bitcoin at 100K and the majority of the transactions be fungible tokens on this monetary network. Anyway, Without further ado, thank you so much for listening to Bitcoin Season 2. Make sure to like and subscribe, both on YouTube and wherever you find streams. I will see you all next